Here's Sandy, chapter 22, entitled Rescue. There was open spaces for her to run, and she set off like a bullet. She was so excited that she didn't know which direction to choose first. Simon ran after her with the wind blowing in his hair and knocking the breath out of him. He felt alive. It was now autumn, and there was a chill in the air. The ground was crisp and the leaves shone. Sandy ran further than he had hoped, and he struggled to catch up. The last thing he wanted was to lose her. To his surprise, he heard a cry in the distance. It took him a while to realize what it was. It was the sound of a horse. In fact, there were two of them. Sandy stood 20 feet away from them, barking loudly in excitement. She was concerned, and pretty soon so was Simon. He quickly realized that they had slipped into the slurry pond up to their necks, and they were sinking deeper. It was an old mining tip which had been abandoned. The slurry acted like quicksand, and it was sucking anything and everything to the bottom, which had the misfortune to fall in. Simon thought that they must have wandered in. He had heard of people getting stuck, thinking foolishly that they were too strong to be in danger, but never horses. When he saw the broken fence in the distance, it became obvious to him what had happened. Two farmers came running across the field carrying a thick rope. Slowly, one of them waded into the pit, but not too far. "There's a tire under my boot," he said. "I'm safe." The next thing that he did was to throw a rope with a loop around it, and after a few attempts, he caught around the horse's head and slid down its neck to form a knot. He pulled the rope tight, and slowly and carefully he urged her forward. It was like wading through toffee. Simon watched all this with rapt attention. One thing he had always been frightened of was quicksand. This slurry pond was doing the same thing, even though it was more like slow sand. It was preventing people from getting out. The horse moved its leg gradually as the men pulled. Slowly they made progress. Simon was relieved that Sandy hadn't fallen in. She would have kicked her legs wildly and sank like a stone. The thought was too much for him to bear. Sandy and Simon watched with tears in their eyes as the first horse was finally free. It was neighing loudly and shaking mud everywhere. Then they did the same with the other mare. This time it was more difficult, as she had seen the other horse walk free, and she was impatient to join her. Each time she kicked or wrestled against the mud, she sank lower. The men could sense danger, and they doubled their efforts. They groaned and grunted with the effort, and with a muddy plop she was freed. She pranced about on the grass happily, sending mud in all directions, but no one minded. They all laughed with relief, and then they led the horses slowly up the hill and into the lush green distance. Simon was sad to see them go, and he didn't realize that over an hour had gone by. He motioned Sandy to walk with him back to the house. It had been an eventful day. It was getting dark, and Simon looked up at the endless stars that dotted the darkening sky, and he wondered if anyone was watching him and Sandy on their adventures. He was sure they were, and they had put a good show on for them.